Good morning. It's Thursday, June 20th. And yesterday was a holiday that is very subtle in my mind. It's not really a grand celebration, but it has great significance to the black community in this country. Yesterday was Juneteenth, the celebration of the day that it was announced that the blacks were free. And that announcement took place in the state of Texas 2.5 years after Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. Now, it took place 2.5 years later because the Union hadn't reconsolidated so quickly after the end of the Civil War. So it took 2.5 years for everything to settle. And it settled in Texas first, where all of the slaves were set free with a proclamation that declared that the property that they lived on was part of their heritage, along with the ownership of the white population. So Juneteenth is a celebration that takes place across this country, but it's not a very powerful celebration. There are only 18 states that have formally declared this a holiday. And of those 18 states, only Louisiana and Texas could be considered southern states. But I don't think that matters because there are many people that will celebrate this day in some form or other, even though it may not be totally recognized in the state where they live. So Juneteenth, as it's called, has been an annual commemoration of the end of slavery in the United States after the Civil War, and this has been celebrated by African Americans since the late 1800s. Now, I never realized that this celebration was going on in the black communities for many, many years, being just like a local celebration, so to speak. Nothing formal had existed up until 2021. That's when President Biden signed the legislation that made Juneteenth, which falls on June 19th, a federal holiday. And that was after the interest in the day was renewed during the summer of 2020 and the nationwide protests that followed the police killings of black Americans like George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. So if it hadn't been for those highlighted episodes in our history, who knows if Juneteenth would ever have been a federal holiday. And that, in my mind, is a shanda. It's a shame that the black communities in this country have been relatively ignored for far too long. So I've been pleading ignorance about this holiday, but I recognize the fact that the neighborhoods that I lived in, they didn't have these celebrations. In fact, the early celebrations of this particular holiday involved prayer and family gatherings, and they included pilgrimages to places like Galveston, Texas, by formerly enslaved people and their families. Now, growing up in the Bronx, I didn't meet any formerly enslaved people. And in my particular neighborhood, which was predominantly Jewish, there weren't any African-American families nearby. So we, I think, in most white communities, were ignorant of the meaning of Juneteenth and what it really represents. So today, celebrations take place among families in the backyards, and all over, and especially in cities like Atlanta and Washington, because they have a large, I'll call it a black population. So they hold events and they hold parades and they have festivals with local businesses and local residents and more. Now, when the president made his announcement in 2020, you couldn't really do any celebration those years because that was in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic, and many cities would not allow a large group to get together. But since then, there are many cities that have ramped up their plans to celebrate Juneteenth. Galveston has remained a busy site for Juneteenth events over the years. And that's according to Douglas Matthews, who has been helping coordinate those events for over 2 decades. So I have been blind in all this time to the events that have taken place on Juneteenth. I have been blind to the fact that this has really been a major holiday, but it wasn't a major holiday in my communities. But I believe that the blacks are entitled to this holiday. They have contributed much to this country in some of the worst conditions of all. So let us celebrate. Let us look at Juneteenth in a different light and recognize that this should be celebrated in all 50 states, not just 18 states. It's a major event. Where would our country be without the contributions of the black community? Even though those were in some regard forced contributions due to the acts of slavery, etc. But Biden signed the bill into law, and it should be a major celebration, not the minor celebration that it really is right now. This is a holiday that should be up there with the 4th of July and Memorial Day. It shouldn't be a holiday that's only celebrated by 18 states. That's a disgrace in and of itself. But let us remember that discrimination is not dead in this country. We still have a long way to go to be a true democracy, as we say. But Juneteenth is a start. And let us hope it grows in nature to be a more powerful influence on our society. A recognition of a huge segment of our population by all of our population. I leave you with that this morning. A gaping hole of one of our celebrated holidays. Have a great day. Bye.